Skirt Magazine recently did an interview with Beau McCall, the artist featured in Stonewall Museum's current exhibit titled Rewind: History on Repeat. The exhibit is based on a recently published picture book of the same name. Beau's longtime partner Solio curated the exhibit and was guest editor of the picture book. The exhibit chronicles Beau's formative years growing up in Philadelphia, and specifically the lifelong relationships he formed with a cast of characters who proved to be essential in his development as an artist. Though the friends portrayed have since passed, the friendships resonated so deeply with Beau that he honors them with this collection of work. We hope you enjoy the interview. You're from Philadelphia.
Yes, I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Okay.
I call it down south Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I've been creative all my life. I realized that I was creative early on. Upcycling wasn't a term, it wasn't a word then. And I was taking things then and recreating them.
Mm-hmm. So during this period, this is like teenage years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So during this period, you come out. Tell me about that.
1975, I graduated high school and we moved to West Philly. And in West Philly, that's where I sort of came out at. Well, where I came out at, because in my neighborhood, all the people that's featured in this project, Antoine, Renee, Tony, we all lived in the same neighborhood. A block up, a block across, 2 blocks over. And we all just sort of bumped into each other. And you know, when you had that gaydar sense and you see somebody else, that you're like, you're one of us.
Right.
So it sort of happened like that. We just all clicked and bonded.
So tell me about coming out in the black community at that time.
Oh, so my friend Tracy, I started hanging around with Tracy and Antoine. Mm-hmm. So we go to Tracy's house, was like the community house. So we would go over there. That would be the hangout place. We would go over there and we'd be sitting in the kitchen all day and just discussing things, young, music, boys, the neighborhood. But the thing about our neighborhood is the guys in our neighborhood, they protected us.
Well, okay.
So we really didn't fear walking into other neighborhoods that were close by. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, well, that's Beau, that's Tommy, that's Antoine. They from 58th Street. They live on 58th Street. All the guys knew us, whatever. And they knew my brothers. They knew their brothers. So it sort of eased the journey, that we could go to and fro without being harassed. So for the most part, we stayed in the neighborhood. There used to be this club called the Olympia Ballroom. And when I got in the club, I was like in awe because I saw men dance together before. When they started playing slow music and men were slow dancing, I was on the sideline. I was just in amazement, like these are actually 2 men slow dancing together. And it was very passionate. It was very intimate.
Yeah.
And, the night went on, and when it was over, they was like, well, what did you think? I said, I want to come back next week.
Right.
So I got the bug, and we would go every Friday night, get dressed up and go to the Olympia Ballroom.
So let me ask you something. You go to the gay club, you get exposed to that. How does that exposure, that experience start affecting your art?
Well, at the time, I hadn't really considered myself an artist. I just considered myself a creative.
Okay.
I know in my high school yearbook, when they did the little closing remark captions, I said I wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
So I knew it was in me. At the time, I didn't really take it serious. Okay, this new door opened, and was this gay lifestyle. I was being interested in that, and what I learned from that is that gay men like to be seen. It's a lot of divas in the gay world, right?
Yeah.
And we would go out, and everybody had all these big, huge personalities, and I knew that I was appealing as far as my attire. I knew how to put an outfit together. So they would always compliment on what I was wearing. If we was going somewhere, the first thing they would say is, what are you wearing? It was that thing. I took notice to that was a part of being creative, how I put my clothes together. So then I went through my drag period,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the queens at the time, they didn't understand where I was coming from because for them it was sort of like it was going to be a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be how they were going to be living in the future.
Right.
That wasn't it for me. What it was for me was dressing up,
Yeah.
learn how to put on makeup. So I used to get Essence magazine. In
Mm-hmm.
Essence magazine, they had a do's and don'ts section on how to put on makeup. So I would be in the bathroom at night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, like practicing how to put my eye makeup on, practicing how to draw my lip and, contour my cheeks and all that kind of stuff. And it took me maybe like a month or two
Mm-hmm.
before I felt I had it down. It was artistic for me.
Mm-hmm. Actually, your collage work
Mm.
is very angular, it's very reminiscent of the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like you remember like the album covers and stuff, the art on the
Mm-hmm.
album covers,
Mm-hmm.
very angular. It
Yes.
was just,
Yes.
there's a specific look, and it's like if you lived it, you remember
Yes.
it. At what point did you consider yourself an artist? Were you still in Philadelphia at the
Yes.
time? Okay.
Yeah. No. I came here because I came here to New York with the intent on doing something creative,
Okay.
but I didn't know what that was.
Okay.
So I got connected with the Black Fashion Museum, and they sort of, well, not they sort of, they exposed my first works as an artist. But still, it wasn't that I didn't take it serious. I think I was a little more intimidated because everybody else was making stuff from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just recycling up purpose, upcycling and all that kind of stuff. And I knew it was some kind of art form, but people didn't acknowledge it the way that they do now.
Describe to me your first body of work. Like you approached them, and what is the body of work you approached them with?
This is what happened. Um, in Harlem, they had this thing at the time called Harlem Week, and it's river to river, 125th Street. It's like this huge block party with all these black folks, right? I had never seen that many black people in my life in an urban area on the street.
Right.
So it's all these different kind of cultural events going on during the month. It's all these different kind of vendors. It was just all this blackness was in your face, and I hadn't seen it to that magnitude.
Mm.
It was like electrifying. Everybody was beautiful. It was a sense of unity. So I really felt the energy in what was going on. So somebody, the guy that I was with, he took me to the State Building. They would have the fashion show in front of the State Building. So I'm watching this fashion show, and it's all black designers. It's all black artists. So I watched the show, and then a couple months. No, I said to my friend, I said I'm going to be in this next year, and it's like, you just talking, yeah, whatever. Right? So I went out and I went to like a Goodwill or whatever, and I bought all these Levi jackets. I think I bought maybe like 10 Levi jackets, and my mom, she still collects buttons for me till this day. Mm-hmm. Like if I go home now, she got a corner somewhere with a bag of buttons or whatever, and I found the wholesale district, and I started buying buttons. And I got these jackets, and I just embellished all these jackets. And I went to see Luther Vandross and Anita Baker at the Garden.
Uh-huh.
So I got my jacket on, and, we was walking around the Garden, and everybody kept saying to me, is that a Patrick Kelly jacket that you're wearing? And I was like, no, this is a Beau McCall jacket. I made this jacket, right? But I had no idea who Patrick Kelly was at the time.
Yeah.
Because, he's known and credited for the button, too.
Okay.
As far as fashion, but he just uses like sprinkles of buttons. My main thing is the buttons.
Yes,
That's
you are the button man. Yes.
Exactly. So it's two different things. Another Philly friend called. He said, "Oh, they're doing auditions at the State Building for Harlem Week. You should take some of those jackets around here and see, if you can get in the show." So I got my duffel bag and lugged all these jackets over to the State Building. And it was a man, George Saunders, who worked with them. I introduced myself. He says, "What you got? Show me what you got. Show me what you got." So I went into my duffel bag, and I pulled out the jackets, and he examined them. He started asking me different questions. Um, can you be in the show this weekend? I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, you're in the show." So it happened like that.
Yeah.
So at this point, it gave me a community. It gave me a base where I could belong. It gave me a family. So those were the first people that um, they were like my New York based family.
Right.
So it kind of opened the door for a lot of other things to follow.
How was the art initially received by
It,
the industry and by the consumers?
the consumers, everybody loved it, right? The industry, when I got the article in Women's Wear Daily, they were trying to figure out how to more or less promote and sell what I was doing. Because at this time, there's no such thing as upcycling. So I got a page and a half. But when I sat and talked to them off record, the woman in Essence said to me, she said, if you don't become a success, we don't want to be a part of a failure. And I was wounded because I'm like, this is my community telling me this in my face. And she said, well, maybe you should go to like Marie Claire or go to Vogue, and if they pick you up, then we'll pick you up. But we want them to take a chance on you and not us take a chance on you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It destroyed me, right? But I stayed focused because the main thing that I do in my art is for me. I'm not making for you, making for you. I'm not making for this critic over here or whoever. It's for me. It satisfies me first.
Right.
So that's what kept me focused. Um, then I talk about all my friends dying. I went through like this period of like I was depressed because every time I called home and I asked about somebody died, whether it was somebody in my circle or somebody just knew in passing. I knew all these people. They was just dropping off the face of the earth. And then I met Solio, and my life changed.
Yeah.
He came up one day, and we still getting to learn each other. He said, "Well, what do you do?" So I said, "Oh, I make these jackets and I do stuff with buttons and blah 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 blah." He said, "Well, let me see."
I do stuff with buttons.
Yeah, like you're very like low key, nonchalant, like whatever. So I go in the closet and I just start pulling out all these things by this time, some of that stuff was like 20 years old, maybe more. And he was like, "You did this? Do you have more stuff?" So I'm like, "Yeah." So I just start pulling out everything. He said, "Well, um, I think I can pull it together and do an exhibition." I think that was 2011, and then from there it just developed and it went on and on, and we're up to now we're still doing it.
Just so I can get a frame of reference time-wise,
Mm.
what is the length of time between the rejection by the magazine and
It's about 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah, I didn't do anything for 10 years. The only thing I did in those 10 years, oh, I would do like little stuff for myself. I did my jacket. My mother asked me to do her pillow, just a little odd stuff, but the focus wasn't the same.
Yeah.
I was still creating.
But were you still going out and like going out to the clubs and like being creative in that sense?
No, I was not going to the clubs anymore. I always say that I'm in the scene, but I'm not a part of the scene. Like,
but always very creative. Pisces are
all
very
the
creative.
time. Like
Yeah.
in my solitude, I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
When it's just me, I'm trying to figure out something and make something out of nothing. So it's been like that from as early as I can remember.
So let me ask you something. I'm just gonna switch topics just a little bit. Okay. Do you consider yourself a black artist? Do you consider yourself an artist? Do you want to be considered a black artist, or do you want to be considered just an artist who happens to be black?
We have this conversation a lot. I'm an artist. I'm black 1st,
Mm-hmm.
but I am an artist who is black.
Right.
When you say that I'm a black artist, it pigeonholes me, and they expect certain things from my work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when we do these exhibitions, whether it was solo or otherwise, I noticed with the black artists, not all, but some of the ones I've come in contact with, is certain similarities that connects you, that you can look at the work and you can immediately identify with it. Now with me, I'm using a button. I'm not using a paintbrush. It's not a sculpture. You really have to read between the lines to figure out who this character is.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, I'm the only button artist. Like several years ago, he did this thing called the Button Show, with all the artists was work with buttons. And when he came up with the idea, I was very against it. I'm like, is this gonna be all a room full of buttons? Nobody's gonna be able to distinguish what artist does from the next artist. Just they're gonna look at it and say, oh, it's just buttons. So as he started selecting the works, I was like, oh, okay. Everybody had their own distinctive style on how they were utilizing the button.
Mm-hmm.
So then I gave in and I said, okay, I'll do it. So when we did the show, it was amazing because it was very distinctive, and it wasn't. I think it was maybe four other black artists, but just looking at the work, you didn't know who was who. So that's what I like as far as my work
Mm-hmm.
is that you can't um, you can't criticize or even compliment by race or nationality.
Mm-hmm.
You have to judge it on the work itself. Because when I did the bathtub, we were in Texas. I think we were in Houston at one of the black museums there, and the reporter that reviewed the show was this white woman, and she said, How can this tub be based on For Color Girls, Red Poem #1, when it's a white woman laying in the tub?" Because I had a silhouette of this woman's torso in the tub, right? So, he showed it to me, and I was like, no, I have to address this. And her body, the way I pieced her body together, is all the fabrics are floral on top of clear buttons, so you could actually see the floral pattern. So the floral pattern was intentional, so you could see the delicacy and the vulnerability of a woman in this floral pattern. So I was trying to figure out how does she see a white woman in it? But different eyes see different things. So again, if she didn't know that I was a black artist, would she have made that comment? So it's things like that. But I'm very conscious about my work. Um, I don't do things just for the trend or just because Black Lives Matter was popular and everybody was doing these Black Lives Matter work and influences and da 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 da. I do what I feel. I do what comes from the heart. Because if I do what's in the moment and I'm sitting on these talks and people asking me questions, I need to explain it.
Yeah.
And I need to go in depth about why I was inspired to do whatever it is that I'm doing. So I never just jump on topics like that.
I always say that, people need to define you in order to define themselves.
Yeah.
That's always the way it is.
Because even with this project, I didn't know what I wanted to do. They said, "Oh, well, you can do this picture book. Do whatever you want to do." And these friendships were major for me. And um, when I decided to do it, I just thought I was going to do it and breeze through it. But it was like every little piece, every little corner, I would just break down and I'll have to push it away and just regroup.
Can I tell you what I see when I look at your pieces up there? So that drawer that everybody's got in their house, and it's like the catch-all drawer, right?
Everything's in there.
Yeah, everything's in there. So you find a pen in there, you find a paper clip, you find buttons, you find everything, and that's the drawer that nobody goes into. It's not for the public to see. It's your drawer. You know that you can find anything. They look like if you were to open up these different drawers, it looks like just like a snapshot in that drawer.
I like that.
Do you know what I mean?
I like that.
Like that
I
was
can
my
relate to that.
first impression
Mm-hmm.
of these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They're very intimate. They're very, very intimate pieces. And so I know that when you talk about each piece and when you talk about each person, I understand why you get so emotional, because like I don't know. I mean, I look at them and I see the good time, I see the relationship, I see the intimacy. It really comes through. I mean, that's what I see. It's always in the eye of the beholder, but that is what I see.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're amazing. I think your pieces are amazing.
Because like I said, the day I started it, Tracy died the day before, and I just went to visit her in the hospital like a week before, and we had our final conversation, and I knew in that conversation that was it.
Yeah.
And then they called and said, "Oh, we're gonna start the project today. We needed to come to Newark," and like it was just like somebody just took air out of my body, and I just deflated. But the most thing that I'm proud about is that I was able to preserve all those memories. Because Antoine, who's in the piece also, he used to say to me all the time, "Y'all two are picture crazy. You with the camera, and this bitch always jumping in front of the camera. Y'all always want to take pictures. You always want to take pictures, right?" And the reason for me taking the pictures, an older friend of ours used to always say, "Y'all gonna be young for a short time, but if you make it to be old, you're gonna be old for a long time."
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. So I wanted to preserve all the moments. And I did the best that I could with the little disposable cameras, and I just saved all the pictures, and I had no idea that it was going to lead to this. So it paid off in the end.
Skirt Magazine wants to thank Beau McCall and Solio for their time.